Hello, everyone. I just want to start the evening off and welcome everyone to this space. My name is Kimberly Sansusi. I'm the Executive Director of the Cambridge Women's Commission, and I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I'm grateful to see so many of you familiar faces and names. And I'm glad that you're going to be part of the conversation with us tonight, especially given that there's so many ways that you could be spending your evening and you've chosen to spend it here with us. Before we get started, I wanted to just thank a few folks, and I specifically want to thank Emily Shield, project coordinator for the commission, who spent an enormous amount of time and energy to put this evening together. I also, of course, want to thank our guests, Monica Cannon-Grant and Zeina Marchant, for sharing themselves with us tonight. I want to thank our co-sponsors for this evening. I want to thank the YWCA Cambridge. I want to thank specifically Whitney Mooney and Executive Director Eva Martin Blythe. I want to thank our other two co-sponsors, all the members of the LGBTQ+ Commission. And I'd also like to thank Liz Speakman of the Domestic and Gender-Based Violence Prevention Initiative. I also just want to say, a really big thank you to our sort of ever exceptional and ever ready local access station, CCTV, for carrying this conversation live tonight on Channel 8 and also on their YouTube and Facebook Live. So this is also, some folks might want to know that this is being recorded, and you will have the opportunity to be able to see this again or tune in again. And I do also want to take a moment to just give a plug for the 19th Amendment Centennial Public Artwork that's going to be, that will eventually grace the Cambridge Common. But right now we're asking our community for feedback. We have 4 artists in the final submission, and this is going to commemorate the 19th Amendment's centennial, as well as the ongoing struggle for voting rights in this country. We certainly are in a historic moment as it relates to monuments. They are coming down rightly, and we want your feedback on one that's going up. So we really want to hear, we want you to tell us what you think, and I'm going to put the link to that feedback in the chat later on, so people can head over there to the 19th Amendment. I also want to, I just want to acknowledge the activated times that we're in right now, with a pandemic and following the murder of George Floyd. The calls to dismantle systems of oppression, white supremacy, patriarchy have gotten louder. And if we were to apply an anti-racist, anti-sexist lens to all spheres of our community, our schools, our health centers, our police, our banks, our city hall, what would it look like? And tonight we get to be in conversation with Monica and Xena, and we get to imagine what it would look like to live in that community, to live in a community where Black women are the leaders and the voices of change, to live in a community where those who are most marginalized are moved to the front and are centered. So how each of us in this space tonight, particularly white folks, how are we working to eliminate racism and sexism? And how will we interrupt the gender inequities, the racial inequities in our community? I'm grateful to all of you who are here tonight, who are here with us to think and to plan and to imagine and to take action. And I just want to thank you again and pass on to Emily.
Hello, everyone. As Kimberly said, I'm Emily from the Cambridge Women's Commission. We're so happy to have you here tonight, and I am very excited to introduce Monica and Xena to you. First, I have a couple housekeeping things. One is to stay on mute during the entire program. The second is if you would like to just see Monica and Xena talking, many of you probably know this, but you can go up to speaker view and it will show you just Monica and Xena as they're talking instead of everybody in smaller pictures. Third, our Q&A session, which will be at approximately 8 o'clock, will be entirely in chat. So if you have questions, please type them in the chat feature of Zoom, and we have someone who is going to monitor and read them. So again, if you have questions starting around 8 o'clock, please type your questions in the chat feature and we will read them. So welcome. First, I'd like to introduce Monica Cannon-Grant. Monica is an activist and community organizer from Boston. Monica believes in her motto, our community, our responsibility, which is how she became the CEO and founder of Violence in Boston, Inc., a nonprofit whose mission is to improve the quality of life and life outcomes of individuals from disenfranchised communities by reducing the prevalence of violence and the impact of associated trauma. Monica was the lead organizer in the Fight Supremacy March to counter-protest the Boston Free Speech Rally in 2017, and one of the lead organizers for Hands Off Our Pride counter-protest to the Straight Pride. As a former Black Lives Matter activist, on June 2nd, Monica organized 55,000 people to protest the murder of George Floyd and the many others murdered by police across the country. Thank you, Monica. And Zeina Marchant is an elected member of the Winchester School Committee. She has been volunteering for Monica Cannon-Grant since first meeting her in 2016. On behalf of Violence in Boston, Xena organized food and reusable bag drives. She has served on Violence in Boston's board. She is currently serving on Violence in Boston's board and is committed to fighting against systemic racism. So welcome, Xena and Monica.
Thank you so much for having us. It's really an honor to share this platform with Monica. Monica, I don't know if you want me to delve in or if you'd like to do a little intro. All right.
Go for it, Xena.
All right, here we go. I first met Monica in 2016 when it was luck would have it that I would put myself in a position to get to meet Monica. I was sitting on the Massachusetts National Organization for Women's Political Action Committee, and we were interviewing candidates for endorsements. And I can, without any hesitation, say the one person that blew my mind of everybody else was Monica. 15-20 minute interview, more about what it means to be an anti-racist than anyone else had taught me up to then. I had practiced law, I had been in other nonprofits, so I had a lot of experience, but nobody was able to help me understand like Monica did. She is a Black mother living in Roxbury, doing the work that all Black moms in these communities are doing. They are fighting for the lives of their children. And I am a mom, and it reached my heart and soul trying to picture my children in that situation of fearing for their safety, and something about the not to create any harm towards mental health, mental capacity, but there is a brilliance about Monica in the way she takes her lived experience, take the anecdotes of her community members, and a lot of data. This woman is brilliant in how she brings it all together and lays it out. I am an immigrant. I was born in Lebanon, and so I had a little bit more, I had lived through the Civil War as a child, so I had a little bit of an understanding of what it meant to have a child living in the streets, feeling like you are constantly at war. And so I don't know why, Monica, but I'm so grateful that you accepted my email when I said I would like to start volunteering, and we took it from there. And why was I a person that you felt comfortable reaching out to?
You were so warm when I interviewed with Mass Now. I was a first-time candidate running for state representative. I had heard all the things that I think most Black women hear, which is put on your pencil skirt and your cardigan, and you have to talk a certain way, and you have to be a certain way in order to get the endorsement. But the part I struggled with is I didn't know how to show up as anybody but me, right? So I said to myself, I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna have this conversation. Either they're gonna love me or they're gonna hate me, but they're gonna get Monica raw and uncut. And I'm just going to be honest, because if I do anything outside of that, it wouldn't be genuine. And you was just so welcoming in that space. And then when you followed up, I'm like, she wants to volunteer. I've been doing this work by myself out the kitchen. I need help. And so I was super excited about it. And then we partnered a few times to do the food stuff. And I was like, you did a whole drive out in Winchester for Violence in Boston. And I remember me and Clark driving down thinking, this woman lives in Winchester and she's galvanizing food for Roxbury, thinking it was just mind boggling. And when I showed up, you were a regular mom with your kids and your husband, and we loaded up the car, and I told Clark, I'm like, she's amazing. And we tried time and time again to talk to different organizations together, because you kept telling me how amazing I was, even though I didn't believe it. And so we kept having meetings with different people trying to get them to support us, and they wouldn't. And now we're here, Xena, so shame on them.
You don't know how many people reach out to me now saying, oh, I remember me. But what I love about working with you is your ability to reach people where they are. Not all of us are coming to this work, especially now as it becomes trendier to say Black Lives Matter. Even corporations are, trying to sell us stuff with that phrase. But you come at it from the perspective of, I know you are not me, but let me tell you about me. And you create this safe space for us to explore the conversation. And I've learned so much about what it means to be an anti-racist. I have learned what it means to not try to be a white savior, that I do not lead violence in Boston. I do not center myself in violence in Boston. Instead, I am giving you all the resources I have at my disposal, whether it's my network, whether it's my money, it's all on the table for you, because I was able to self-reflect on what it is I actually need in my own life and what everyone else is needing. And the fact that there are people in Roxbury and Dorchester that are hungry, kids are going hungry, that the violence is not being redressed, that Black families cannot reach out to the police because they're afraid of them as much as they are of the gangs. It goes on and on. So the way you welcomed me into the movement, the way you taught me, has been so inspirational.
Yeah, I think for me, there are people who, so the other piece is you have to be open, and you were open. Not everybody is that welcoming. Some people will get the other side of Monica, which is a bunch of expletives and an invoice that says, pay me for my time for having to have this horrible ass discussion, right? And the reason being is like, there are going to be those who are open to learning and understanding that no matter what you do, you don't wake up Black. And waking up Black means I'm already in despair when it comes to how people see me. And so in that space, I guess it's easy to be able to be like, well, hey, if you don't know and you're asking, let me educate you on what it really is like, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you're not growing up in that environment, you're not gonna know what it is. You don't understand what it is to have a conversation with your kids before they leave the house that, listen, you're not getting on public transportation. Where are you going? What is the address? What is the license plate of the car you're getting in? How long are you gonna be there? Am I picking you up? You can't come home by yourself. Those are regular occurrences. Like, I'm in a group chat. I'm on 2 separate apps that tell me the location of my kids at all times. That's an everyday occurrence. That's second nature for us. That's our norm. And that's not the norm for a lot of people. Or the fact that I could be sitting in a meeting with Tito Jackson and 22 shots get let off, and my kid calls me and tells me, Mommy, come home. They done shot up the street. That has happened so much at this point that it's sad to say it's not shocking. And even last year after the Black Women's Conference, when I had a Black woman visiting me from out of town, and we cooked out on the front doorstep, 14 shots on the side of the house. They almost killed my husband and my son. I'm in full-fledged panic mode, but I'm also embarrassed because this woman is from out of town, and her first interaction into the Black community is 14 bullets that hit my neighbor's refrigerator and hit another neighbor's car. And so it's that realization that even in the midst of doing this work, and people now figuring out who Monica Cannon Grant and Violence in Boston is, I'm still dodging bullets. Like, that part hasn't changed. And so a lot of people were like, well, why don't you move? But I leave a whole community of people behind me. Like, that's not helping the community. And so my perspective is to begin to change where I am, that even if I do at some point decide to move, I'm reaching back in to help community members and not just leaving them hanging. And I think that just comes from a place that's where my kids grew up. That's where their friends grew up, and all of the young people come to my house and hang out, and I just couldn't leave them and not try to fight for us to have a decent community to live in.
Before I delve into how amazing you as a Black woman are, in as you elevate your platform and your voice, you never turn back. You are always uplifting others, and I value that so deeply. But one story I wanted to jump in, and it was another moment for me that truly broke my heart. You were over for dinner one night, and one of your daughters just started sprinting down our street, and it was dark outside. And you told me, this is like such a great thing for her to be able to do, because she's never been able to just run freely through her own streets. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I had the privilege to raise my children in a safe community absolutely just tore me apart, because how could your beautiful babies, who I've gotten to know and love as if they're my own babies, how could they be so exposed to such trauma and violence? It just, I couldn't believe it, that we are in 2020 and we're still having this conversation around the safety of babies.
Right.
But it just like always takes me back thinking about that moment
Well, I mean, that's the reality. I think a lot of people, and mainly white people, take it for granted some of the things that are normal that should happen for children and families, that's not our normal. You run in Roxbury, two things is going to happen. Somebody's going to start running too because they want to figure out why you running and what you running from, or you may be running into a situation, a bullets or anything, or you may be attacked because they don't know why you're running. And it's just so many scenarios, but running up and down my street ain't it. There have been plenty of days where they shot up my street, even when kids were standing at an ice cream truck. And like, people will never understand what that is when it's like, I just been on like WGBH. Somebody just posted on my page since we've been talking that I was on NECN tonight and I was on Jim Brody, and I made the front page of the Globe, and I got family members calling like, hey, you're rich. And it's like, yo, no, I go home to Roxbury, there's bullets flying still, because they haven't correlated the fact that fame doesn't equate equality. It doesn't equate safe living arrangements. Like, we're in the process of trying to find somewhere to live just because we've outgrown where we live. But I'm still in Roxbury fighting this fight. So, it's all, I can go to have dinner at Capitol Grill. I still go home to Roxbury. And part of me has felt guilty for a number of years just because I haven't been able to move and my kids remain in this community. But from their perspective, they're like, all our friends are here. Now they're at the age where they're comfortable with me going and us moving and doing things. But I carried that guilt for a number of different years. And that's the conversation a lot of people don't have with you. They just don't have it.
So one of the ways I kind of partition our relationship is there's the individual work, so that if you're hurting, if you need something, I'm able to get you the resources that are at my disposal. I'm able to get you whatever you need. And then there's the systemic work that we're doing. And so a lot of times people confuse the individual one-on-one work of getting people fed and getting a person housed and all of these things with the systemic racism that you face every day, whether it's in policing, which is now in the news much more prevalent than before, or housing discrimination. You have courts that are biased. I mean, every single system that impacts our lives is based on a racist perspective. And so learning how to show up for you on both ends has been a learning process. But I think a lot of white people, we live in these bubbles that we've created for ourselves with the understanding of this is the safe neighborhood, these are the good schools. And so we coalesce around these neighborhoods and these pockets that we never go out into communities of color that are underserved, that are economically depressed. We never make these relationships that you and I have built on. And so I think that's number one in my perspective. In order to build an anti-racist society, first we have to understand what your lived experience is as a Black mother in Roxbury, facing the violence and the school system the way it is and all of these things. So not only do we have to build these trusting, loving relationships, but then we also then reflect on the system-wide oppression that you face every day.
And it's also not getting offended. I think one of the things that's so frustrating is when you say Black Lives Matter and somebody says all lives matter. And it's like, yeah, that's always been the case. Black lives haven't always mattered. But also, I need you to not, I don't need to coddle you when I say that. I need you to understand that when I'm saying that, like I have this t-shirt, prime example, and I went to a fundraiser that was done for violence in Boston yesterday, and it said, shut up, Karen, right? And I remember like this white woman was like, oh, that is a racial slur, calling a white woman Karen. And that's the word that we use when we're talking about white women who have done something offensive, right? It's like Karen is the white woman who wants to put the raisins in the potato salad. She's the white woman who wants to call the police when you're cooking out in the park without a permit. She's the white woman who's calling the police on the little girl who's selling water on the side of the road. And it's frustrating. Now, out of all the things we could call you, first off, Karen is not offensive compared to what we're called and what happens to us.
Exactly.
But it's understanding that we need to show up unapologetically and that be okay, right? And that and my pro-Blackness is not anti-you. It's I love Black people. I love my Black skin. I love my Black children. Because we were taught to not love ourselves. We were taught to hate ourselves, and everything that has been programmed in us has been anti-us. And so affirmations and empowerment is survival. The reason why we were able to build a relationship is because, again, your willingness. Oftentimes I've had conversations, which I've posted and screenshotted those, and you've seen them, with white folks that get defensive and feel the need to justify, and, well, I wasn't alive through slavery, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, so go talk to your grandmother, talk to your aunties, and talk to all of those people in your household, because racism is learned behavior, right? It's learned and it's taught. That means you can unlearn it if you're willing to. And so I don't mind educating certain people, but if you're one of those ignorant racist people, then there's a fee that comes along with that, because like I need my coins, right? Because if I got to sit in a room with you and go through the mental gymnastics of you telling me how slavery was so long ago that I should forget about it. One of the analogies that I like to use when I'm having conversations with difficult people is this comedian named Michael Shea from Saturday Night Live. I love him. He goes, when you say slavery, people go, oh, that was 400 years ago. Why are you guys still talking about that? And when you talk about things that are happening to Black people, it's very dismissive. And he said, but if you say 9/11, white folks go, never forget. And he said he was going to get a t-shirt on 9/11 that said all buildings matter, and see how white people felt about it, because that is the equivalent of what we're saying. You're literally saying, hey, can you stop killing me? And people are going, no, not so much. And that's the gist of it. Like, it's not complicated at all. And so, again, I'm not exclusive in the fact that me and you were able to build a relationship. It's just that my understanding of how things happen, who people are, and being able to distinguish between someone who truly wants to be educated and someone who's just being blatantly racist and ignorant and is not concerned with being educated, but more concerned about riding this wave of all this and all the things they've been taught that has been engraved in like their being and their history. I'm not wasting my time there. It's not on Black people to educate white folks on how to not be racist, right? Because I didn't ask for any of this. It's not my job.
Right.
But if you want to have a conversation with me to get my experience on my day-to-day, on my family and what I experience, then I'm more than willing to have that conversation. But I think it's on white people to educate other white people on, hey, you can't do, right? Like, you can't touch our hair. You know, like, there's just a bunch of things you can't do, right? You can't say the N-word. I don't care how many Black friends you have. You just can't do it.
No way.
And you need to be able to know that that's not okay. And so, but it's us having these conversations like the one we're having now, right? So many people are scared to say white and Black. It's like, no, I'm Black, you're white. It's cool. We still survive.
Exactly.
Now what? So, yeah.
Exactly. So I have had a lot of those moments where I've noted my own bias coming into the work. So one day you were hosting a block party for distribution of school supplies. And the media had brainwashed me into believing that Black fathers aren't around. They don't exist. They're all off getting more women pregnant, or some horrible stereotypes. And that block party, I was very comfortable being one of the only few white people. And I was looking around, I'm like, oh my gosh, there are so many Black fathers right now. All these little kids were being held and running around. And it was, I accepted my own ignorance. And I said to myself, Black fathers matter. They are showing up. They love their children like I love my own, like my husband loves our children. They are not this like foreign entity that we're all supposed to be aware of, be wary of. And so it was just, I was like, God, how stupid for me to even still hold that bias. And it took that kind of event to wake me up to the reality. I know.
But the truth is that everything systematic has made it so that Black fathers can't be on the forefront. If you live in state-funded housing, they can't be on the lease. If you get any type of federal assistance like food stamps and welfare, they can't be on the caseload. If you live in housing where it's based on your income, they can't be noted in the household unless you're not going to receive those benefits. So Black fathers have always been there. They just have had to act as if they weren't there for the benefit of the income for the household because they were also poor, right? And so every system in this country has been strategically set up to pull Black men out of the household or give the appearance that they're not there, give the appearance that Black women are just out here raising all of these babies and they're just going around. And don't get me wrong, it's a few of them out there that got 5 and 6 baby mothers, but that's not the story of the majority, right? It's almost
for white people, like,
right. It's almost like when people say, well, what about Black on Black crime? And it's like, so no, that is a term created by white folks. Any population of people living amongst their own people are going to kill their own people. Nobody is saying Asian on Asian crime. Nobody's saying white on white crime. So I'm gonna need us to debunk this notion that there's a such thing as Black on Black crime. And I love to be able to quote Tupac when he says, listen, Black folks are scared of the same things that white folks are scared of. The difference is the very people we're fearful of that are suffering from mental health, that are coming home from prison, that are experiencing all these disparities are all being dumped in one community on top of each other. And they tell us good luck and shout out to your survival, hope you make it. Whereas they're not being allowed to go into other people's communities. We have a disparity in the amount of mental health beds. We have a disparity in the amount of Black educators that can educate our children properly. And so you go to school and get taught about Christopher Columbus and they leave out the rapings and the killings and all the other stuff he did, or how he didn't discover a place that when he showed up, somebody else was here. And this is what you have. You have a community of people who are suffering and struggling, and let's not mistake it, by man-made poverty, right? And then you critique them for being poor when you created the conditions that they're living in. And so I'm glad that you were able to see that. But the truth is Black fathers are all up and through households. It's just they know that the moment they open their mouth, acknowledge their presence, everything stops. All the benefits stops. And that is still to this day. These systems are still in place to this day.
Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing is I can learn these things. I can read articles, I can take classes, I can get degrees, but it doesn't mean I understand the implications of all of these systems, of all of our laws and policies on your life. And that's why I'm always very careful to center what you are saying and what you are doing above everything else, because if a law gets passed, for example, the policing one that just got passed, there are people who worked on it and they intend good things, but it doesn't go far enough, is what I learned from you. Or when people try to say Massachusetts doesn't have a gun problem, right? Try to legislate around the fact that gun violence is down. Aren't we doing great? And you're like, no, what you're doing is allowing illegal guns into our communities, meaning your communities. And when they try to restrict gun ownership, they're targeting Black people. And taking away the right, limiting their right to license, rather than tackling the illegal gun trade.
Right. And so, and that's the other thing, right? It's like, people love to claim to advocate for Black lives, but you have to actually talk to Black people. We're not a monolith. We don't all think the same. We don't all have the same belief system. So this is where, if you're going to advocate for us, you actually need to come have a conversation with us, figure out what it is that we want, what we're advocating for, what things are we working on the ground, and then take your marching orders to go advocate. One of the biggest issues I had with the bill was that it was watered down. It really didn't change anything. Qualified immunity is still there. Limiting it doesn't get rid of it. And all the other things that were included in that bill were actually previously advocated for when the police department took on that 8 Can't Wait campaign. And so my thing, it was superficial at best. But the biggest issue was that the legislators leading that bill never talked to the Black community, which is why people are like, well, where are the activists and why haven't they showed up? It's like, you didn't talk to us. And then when you got in trouble and you thought the bill wasn't going to pass, we got a call the day before, the night before, and it was disrespectful at best, right? Because the thing is the reason I know that young Black men need assistance with housing, I know that young Black men get discriminated in hospitals when they've been shot or stabbed and they have nowhere to go, is because I actually work and talk to the young Black men who was shot 7 times, where the hospital will send them home with no home health aid because they were labeled gang involved. And I've had to change gauze pads in a hotel room that I took them outside of the city to keep them safe after being shot, because not a nurse or a home health aide would come see them at their residence. The people, you know, Ayanna says it best, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, the people closest to the problem and the pain know how to solve it. But very rarely do people actually listen and talk to us. And the repercussions is you advocating for a bill that's watered down at best and doesn't really create the systematic change that we need to happen as Black folks. So when people, I got a question the other day, prime example, they're like, how do you feel about the murals and the statues being taken down? I'm not going to knock the people who are advocating for that stuff, but that's one piece, right? Would I rather, instead of, in addition to us changing the name of something like Faneuil Hall, I would rather us get together and collectively raise money to own the building, right? Because it to me, you change the name, but if the building is still owned by the city, then they can do whatever they want in the building, right? And so for me, liberation looks like ownership. It doesn't look like superficial things, but I don't want to discredit those who are doing that. That's what artists are supposed to do. They're in their lane. Everybody has a respective lane. Artists create change through art. Activists create change through protest. And what we do is apply pressure to legislators. Listen, there has to be an inside and an outside game. And I use Martin and Malcolm as an example. Martin peacefully protested. It didn't stop him from getting beat up, but that was his lane, right? And he did that. But when he went into meetings, he had a conversation that looked like, so listen, you can have a conversation with me and we can get this done. Or Malcolm's outside by any means necessary and you can talk to him. But either way, we're going to get what we need done one way or another. And that's the analogy I use when dealing with activists. Everybody can't do the meeting for the meeting about the meeting during the meeting in regards to the meeting. Some of us just want to go down there, protest, and get on your front lawn and tell you to pull up, right? But my orders should come from those who are at the meeting. My orders should come from those who are on the inside who are like, listen, I'm advocating for this legislation. And if I can't get the support inside, I'm gonna need you to pull up with the community outside. And I need our legislators to get better at doing that, because that's how you create systematic change. So for those who are like protesting doesn't help, it's in addition to.
Mm-hmm. So it's not like activists have just now come to the scene. Activists have been around since who knows when.
Yeah.
And so what disconnect, how can we overcome the disconnect between the activists, especially Black women? And we'll get to the sexist part of your experiences. Wow, can you tell stories? But what can we do to bridge that gap, that disconnect between the policymakers and the activists who know what is needed?
So I'm gonna be honest, I'm not quite sure. I think it's the willingness to have difficult conversations. And I'll use my relationship with Mayor Walsh, right? 269 days, I dragged that man publicly on every social media platform I had, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If he had Snapchat, I was gonna come for him over there too, right? And my thing is you know, he was making a lot of statements, but he hadn't had a conversation with Black folks and Black activists more specifically in the community. 269 days, I will go, today is 159th day that Marty Walsh ain't talked to Monica Cannon. And I did that every day, consistent. Shout out to the white woman who was counting the days for me on Twitter and keeping up. And she started creating pictures of the number of days that I waited for him to contact me, right? And on the 269th day, after me and him were at a visual together for a young woman, matter of fact, Jassy Carrera, who was murdered in the city of Boston, I said to him, I was like, so you know you got to talk to me, right? He's like, yeah. So the next day he calls and says, let's go to breakfast. We go to breakfast in Roxbury. We share a bagel. It's great. First thing he says to me is, can you stop calling me motherfucker? I said, absolutely. Can you stop talking about being a Black man like you know what it is to be one? He said, absolutely. I apologize. I respect it. We sat down and had a conversation. That was the beginning of us having several conversations, multiple conversations on the betterment of the city of Boston. Because at the end of the day, my critique was his policy decisions, the decisions he was making on behalf of my city and my community that didn't align with what the community wanted. And both of us were passionate about this city. So we both had a mutual concern for the city of Boston. It was about finding a ground where we could work together. And a lot of people felt like, well, oh my God, now that she's cool with Marty Walsh, she's not going to drag him no more. No, I just do it via text message, right? And if I disagree with him, I let him know that I disagree with him respectfully, and I stand my ground because I wake up Black. I don't have the option to pick and choose. I don't have the option to ignore any issue, because at the end of the day, it's going to affect me and my family and my children first. I'm a mom of 6 kids living in Roxbury. 4 I gave birth to and 2 that God dropped off along the way, right? And so I answer to those young people in my household first, and then I answer to the young Black men that I fight for every day, for people to see them as human beings, because before they were shooters, they were victims. And if all of us use that mindset in addressing what's happening in our community, we will be better off. And so, you know, I feel like in that situation, policymakers have to get comfortable talking to activists. We're angry, but our anger is just, right? And oftentimes the trope angry Black woman is used to discredit the things that are coming out of your mouth. But tell me, if your house is shot up 15 times, someone puts a gun to your son's head, pulls the trigger, and your kids have to watch one of their friends be shot in the face, or 22 shots get let off at an ice cream truck at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that you ain't gonna be angry. So I need people to understand the things that they say when they talk about Black women and Black communities.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, though, where the intersectionality of your identity, what I've learned is how Black women are burdened not only by white people, but also Black men in the movement. And so you've had to face a lot of sexism in the work you've done. We've all seen it live on Facebook. It was quite clear what happened. There were a lot of times where you are just trying to do what's best for everybody around you, and you are being treated as if you are trying to line your pockets rather than to see the purity of your work. How are you coping with the sexism that you faced from white men, Black men, all kinds of men, and in addition to all the white supremacy issues?
Well, Angela Davis has this quote that says, Black women have had to understand white men, white women, and Black men, as well as understand themselves. But when a Black woman wins, it is a win for society, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that frustrates me is that Black women get called on when it's time to vote. Why? Because the Black woman vote is one of the most powerful votes in this country. Mm-hmm. Black women get called on every time somebody gets killed in the street. It was Black women who jumped on the front lines in Ferguson first, mm-hmm. right? And we're the ones that's always being called to show up. And that's based on history. When you look at the fact that we had to breastfeed kids that we didn't give birth to, and we're cooking in kitchens that we didn't create, and we're showing up. I mean, you know, at times when we should have been able to rest. And at some point I plan to rest, but it's frustrating to have somebody try to discredit you and say to you, because as a Black woman, you're supposed to sit down and allow somebody to have this imaginary throne that they haven't advocated to get to, is disrespectful. I have a model though that I have embraced, that I will not argue with anybody that Harriet Tubman would have shot. And so, that's how I'm handling it now. I will say in the past, I've been pulled in to defend myself. People told me I was getting rich. I never understood it when I was going back home to subsidized housing and dodging bullets. If I'm gonna get rich, I'm gonna make it count. There's gonna be a house in Dover somewhere, right? But I think what happens is a lot of Black people, and more specifically, Black people in this work, have been convinced that the bucket in the pot is so small that we have to cut each other's throat to get this imaginary bucket of money that is so small that we got to cut each other down to get it. When in all actuality, the bucket is really large, but your thinking is small, right? Your mindset as to how to adequately advocate for people and what true liberation looks like is small. And so what I had to stop doing was leaving off of my throne and arguing with people that don't leave their couch, right? Because while I'm arguing with you, nobody knows who you are, but they know who I am. And now they know who you are because I've argued with you about something that took time out of my schedule where I could have been feeding a family, paying somebody's rent or utilities, or advocating for somebody's life. And so in the process of growth, which wasn't easy because I'm a Black woman, we keep receipts. And if you come for me and I didn't send for you, I might pull up. I had to change my mindset. I had to realize the power that I hold. I had to realize who I was as a person, and that there are children who I'm raising to be activists, who they need to understand that while you're arguing with the person on the ground, things are happening that need your attention. And so again, my motto for 2020 and beyond is I'm not arguing with nobody that Harriet Tubman would have shot.
Amen to that. That's helped us move along and do a lot of work.
Hasn't it though, Xena?
Really has changed the dynamics and the movement that violence in Boston has done.
But the other piece is this, Xena, right? In order for them to be coming for you, it's because they see your power too. So then I look crazy giving away that power to someone.
Exactly.
I look crazy entertaining you. I look crazy going back and forth with you. Delete, block, who's this? That's where I'm at. Like, I'm not doing it, because a lot of these people don't do work in the community, but have time to sit and critique you. And you know, a lot of that is systematic as to what we've been taught. When you think about history and slavery, we had house Negroes and field Negroes. Marcus Garvey has this quote that I love where he says, listen, everybody's not going to be able to go back with me to Africa. Some of y'all, I'm going to have to leave here. Why? Because if you act a fool here, you're going to act a fool over there. So everybody can't be a part of the revolution. Harriet shot her husband. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for the revolution. I'm just saying.
Let's pray for Clark. He's too amazing.
Oh, he's great. I'm not going to have to shoot him. He's doing great.
He's one of my favorite buddies. Clark is Monica's amazing husband who supports her. He exemplifies what it means to be a Black man in a loving, healthy, supportive relationship. You have been, people compliment you all the time on the relationship you and Clark have. He goes to work, he comes home, gets to work some more, and it's
but
amazing.
The other piece is this, right? Because we are always extremely tough on Black men. We have to also realize that simultaneously, Black men are literally turning televisions on and watching Black men be killed, have knees put in their neck and be murdered, being shot, being beaten, being dehumanized. Waking up a Black man is a plight in itself, right? And then on top of that, you have to show up for your family. On top of that, you have to be a father. On top of that, so I don't want to discredit the plight of just being a Black man and what that is in 2020 as we live and speak. I mean, you know, part of the reason why Black women activate is watching Black men be killed, right? When I organized on June 2nd to protest the 55,000 people, is because we watched George Floyd be murdered and 4 other officers surround and not try to stop it. And that man begged and pleaded and called for his mother on camera. And even us being killed on camera is not humanizing us enough for people to care. And so as a Black woman raising 4 sons, you don't get to have my kid. If I could save him from my community and him not be shot on the streets of Roxbury, I damn sure ain't about to let a cop kill my kid. Like, I'll go out in a hail of bullets, because at the end of the day, his life matters. And I think that's the baseline of all of this. It's like, matters. That's it. Just simply matters. No, we're not talking about blue lives, because blue is not a skin color. It's not a heritage. It's not any of those things. It's disrespectful. It's ignorant. We're talking about Black lives, and Black men are being killed, but also Black women. Breonna Taylor didn't get the level of advocacy that she should have got as a Black woman in her house sleeping, being murdered. Like, so you tell us that we're getting killed because we don't cooperate with the police. She was asleep. At this point, we have died sleeping, eating ice cream, Lucy cigarettes, minding our business, standing up, sitting down. At this point, it doesn't matter what we do. So I'm no longer having the conversation about if we matter or not. We are in a civil rights movement. What side are you going to be on? That's where we are right now.
And that's the amazing thing, is that you have brought together a group of Black men and uplifted them along the way. I mean, you've supported and you've given them a table, a seat and a table to have the conversation around what it looks like for the community to support and protect Black men. And so I commend you for that, because it's been beautiful to watch that group of you call them your brothers because you've grown up with them. And so that, I mean, not only, even if that person who attacked you while he was doing nothing, if tomorrow he calls you and says, Monica, I'm hungry, you will be at his door knocking it down to make sure he is fed. That's the kind of activist you are. And so it's on us as white people who want to do this work. We should all want to do this work because we will all benefit from an anti-racist, anti-sexist society. If we all get the same benefits of living in this rich, free society, then we all benefit. And so your ability to bring us all together is so powerful. But I urge, Cambridge has incredible Black women activists. I've read about them, I've seen them in action. And so I want the people on this Zoom that are Cambridge residents to find these Black women activists who are not hard to find, and support them and help them do the work they need to do, not by trying to take over their platform or telling them how to do their jobs. Just give them the resources and the time to be heard. And that's the message that I feel like we need to repeat over and over. Though it sounds so basic and easy, it's not. There have been so many times where I want to jump up and down and say, me, I'm part of this, I'm part of this. And it's like, who the hell are you? This isn't your fight to center yourself in. And I've had to teach myself, because the white culture teaches us to always self-promote and always put ourselves up front. And so this has been a very humbling experience about, you are just there to dot I's and cross T's when Monica says to, but this is Monica, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy that you are finally getting the platform. And so I urge people to find and support and build up more Monicas, whether it's in Cambridge or Winchester.
Yeah, because the goal is to create more leaders, not more followers. I don't need no one to follow me. I need people to feel empowered and mobilize and activate, right? And one of the things that, you know, we got to get better at is passing the baton, right? Like, I don't want to get to this platform where I have this insane amount of power and I haven't reached back down to send the elevator back up for someone else, right? And regardless of what that looks like. Oftentimes we get in these positions, we get comfortable, and then you don't want to move. And so the joke that I say is, I don't have Megan Thee Stallion kneecaps. I don't want to be here forever. At some point, I want to rest, put my feet up, and allow these young people, because they are so amazing and so intelligent and so smart and so resourceful, to be able to say, here, this is what I learned. This was the things that I learned that were great. These are the things I learned that wasn't great. And here's what I can give you as to the playbook, as what I went through, so you don't repeat those same things. And then let them go ahead and navigate and do what it is they need to do. The other thing I would say is that, like, not just support Black women in regards to showing up, but like, we're leading movements, we're feeding communities, we're doing a whole bunch. It's like, show up and bring equity. You know what I mean? Bring your rich friends, bring those people who are like, hey, I have all this money and I don't know where to put it. Well, there are Black kids who are hungry in BPS school, over 5,000 of them. Let's start feeding them. There are Black women who can't pay their bills, can't pay their rent because COVID has set them so far back, and now they're furloughed and sitting in the house trying to figure out, do I pay the rent or do I pay the light? Or do I feed the kids and not pay the rent? Those are life decisions being made. And so the push is definitely to support. Violence in Boston posted a bunch of Black and brown businesses that people can jump in to support and get behind if you're looking for someone to support or organizations to support. And then I guess the other thing I would say is that every protest that I've done has been in response to Black men and what they have gone through. When I protested in 2017, and shout out to my friend Tracy, AKA Treyonce, was on the front lines in Charlottesville, and was with the young woman when she lost her life. And I remember being on a phone call, a video call, and just the anger and frustration in his voice from being there. And then we got word that those same people were coming to the city of Boston. And I remember being so angry, and I couldn't figure out why the rest of the community wasn't angry. I was like, they're coming to Boston. They're not coming to my neighborhood, and I'm not going to do anything. Right. And it's just that frustration. You know what I mean? It's like feeling like you don't have a choice but to show up, because you be damned if somebody run you in the house.
And such an important point is that turning back the movement to others, because you don't claim to have all Black identities. There are Black transgender women that are being murdered on our streets, and who's giving them the voice? We need to turn back and uplift a transgender woman of color to say, a Black woman, to say, what are your needs? How are you impacted day to day, not only by racists,
Right.
but
And the legislation that Donald Trump just passed took away their health care. So
right.
Black trans women don't have health care right now. So they have an emergency fund. It's a Black trans emergency fund. And shout out to Chastity Bowick and Athena Vaughn, who are working on that. But they need support. Why? Because imagine somebody taking your health care right now and telling you you can't go to the doctor and be properly taken care of. That is survival. That is the basic of all needs. And I think even me being a Black cis heterosexual Black woman, there's a privilege in that, right? And so again, being in this position means that I now have the responsibility to use my voice to advocate for those who are not going to get this imaginary seat at this table, which, you know me, screw the seat at the table. I'll make my own table and y'all got to pull up and catch me. And so it's realizing that when you get to a certain level and you recognize the disparities, and for those who are like anti-LGBTQIA+, we're not talking to you, because at the end of the day, before they know your sexuality, they see your skin, they see that melanin. So my job and my responsibility is I'm for everything Black. You know what I mean? Black dogs, Black cats. I don't care what it is. And realizing that you have a responsibility to advocate for people who don't get that opportunity is the biggest thing. And it's a lot of pressure as a Black woman with 6 kids, and I'm on my second marriage. Just saying, like, it's a lot of pressure, but this is the responsibility that comes with that.
Right. And you uplift those voices, and you tackle within the Black community, you tackle the opposition to those voices head on. And like you always repeat, we're not a monolith. So I see some of the struggles you face within the Black community to get the power to those identities so that they can speak for themselves. And so that's the message I really want to make sure we walk away from. And I encourage the sponsors to really uplift the voices of the Cambridge Black women who are doing the same kind of work, and Black men, and all the other identities who are doing this work that need that support, so that you can become a Monica Cannon Grant and a Violence in Boston. Can you tell us some of the things? I know what they are, but can you tell us a little bit about the Social Impact Center you're doing and how that fits into the anti-racist, anti-sexist theme of this conversation?
So it's been a whirlwind, but through my relationship with the mayor, we have a building that I'm actually sitting inside of right now, Social Impact Center, 4,200 square feet, 40 parking spots, gender neutral bathrooms, where we will have on-site studio and podcasting space. Microsoft donated 10 computers. What else has happened? I think I'm forgetting stuff.
A lot of stuff, actually.
Yeah. So many people have come in and donated their time to do the renovations. And so we have volunteer painters, volunteer electricians, just people coming in who have offered their services pro bono. We just found out yesterday that Cooley Law Firm is now a partner with Violence in Boston and has offered legal services to young Black men who are coming home upon reentry or who are involved in the court system, to make sure that they have adequate legal representation, because oftentimes they get looped into agreeing to deals that they shouldn't be in, and they throw their whole life away because nobody was there to advocate for them. So we brought on a whole law firm pro bono to be able to do that, partnering with Children's Hospital, Boston Medical Center, and Mass General around the mental health piece, but ensuring that that they receive these services. Sharon, I'm not giving out the address until I drop it on the invite, because we're doing our grand opening on September 7th, but it's in Hyde Park. I see the comment in the chat. I just wanted to say it out loud. And just be able to do this work. I did it out my kitchen off of food stamps for the longest time, you know what I mean? And I was literally taking my food stamps and doing block party, taking my food stamps and feeding people. I had young Black men on air mattresses in my house. The kids are like, who are these people? I'm like, they're your new brothers. Don't even worry about it. So like, to be able to have a building that will have a washer and dryer, because we take for granted what young Black men and young Black women go through coming home after incarceration. And so we start at the basics: your ID, your social security card, your birth certificate, clean underwear, taking off the clothes that you were incarcerated in, because it plays into your mental health. And so making sure that we can supply all those things for young people and those coming home. We are service age 15 to 28, and we spread that out because there are a lot of people in our community that need help. Everything from toiletries to food. We'll have an on-site food pantry. Tina Sherry from the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute is going to come help us with our healing space and trying to encompass a place that is a safe space for people to come to, where they can get their needs met, not be judged. We're even going to develop a fund where we'll be able to pay people's rent and utilities. And then what they'll have to do is do a financial literacy course that they'll get for free, to learn how to not be in that predicament. But you will build an escrow account, right? And so after 4 years, you'll get that funding, and we will help you in your pursuit to ownership, because this is how we build equity, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that we don't ever have the opportunity to do is pass on equity to our Black and brown children. We pass on bills, debt, and bad credit scores. And so one of the things I want to change is that narrative that if you're Black, you can't have nice things, so to speak. So giving you equity and giving you a jump start into a better life, because somebody did it for me. You know what I mean? And I'm a kid who grew up Franklin Hill Ave, 2-bedroom, me, my mother, and my brother. There was holes in the floors, and we could watch the mice run through the walls. So to get to the point now where, yes, I still live in the hood, but I have a little bit more advantage than most people, and I have a little bit more resources than most people, there's a responsibility there to not leave those people behind. And so that's the goal of the Social Impact Center. There's so many partnerships that have come our way in the last 30 days, Xena, that I would be here all night if I tried to name all of them. Right. There will be some surprises happening the end of this week and the beginning of the next week that I will make public. But the goal is for all of us to win, you know?
Right. So I think our time is coming to an end, but I just want to reiterate the reason I wanted to end with the Social Impact Center is to show how many different spheres people can plug into to do this work. If you are a financial planner, you can plug in to help people build their equity. If you are in real estate, you can make sure that, housing is not discriminated. If you're a medical professional, you can show up and help heal people. There are so many things that are needed, food, all kinds of resources, all kinds of expertise is welcome into this movement. And so I hope that everybody walks away thinking of what gifts they can bring to this movement, because we all have something we can contribute. And it's been an honor and the best thing that ever happened to me, to know Monica and to work with you. And I pray that our relationship is for life. You are I always tell her I love her. She's my love. She's my.
So Xena, you left out a part that I didn't mention. You probably didn't mention it on purpose, but Xena paid for me to become a nonprofit. And I never forget, she was like, you should be a nonprofit. And I was like, I ain't got no money. Who's doing all of that? And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to pay for you to become a nonprofit. And when you get rich, you pay me back.
And I didn't mean that. You will never.
Yeah. I've tried to give her money. She won't take it. It's cool.
Never take it.
But like that same opportunity. And for those that don't know, I had the opportunity to do that for someone else. So there were young Black men in my community who were doing work. Their fathers, they're all on the SSYI list. And if you don't know what those letters mean, that just means they are known gang involved on this list that the city holds. And they were already doing father events. They were blocking our streets, trying to give back and do something different, even though they had this quarry attached to them, right? And they were getting ready to do this event that they had did, and it was probably like their third or fourth event. And they were giving away backpacks with school supplies, free haircuts, free food, and they had it, and about 200 of them were in one spot. Nobody shot, nobody hurt, nothing, right? With their children, other people's children and families. And one of the young men, I seen them posting on, I've been knowing them my whole life. We all grew up together. I seen them posting on Facebook that they may need help with certain things that they didn't get a chance to get. And I knew that they was hustlers. They could have figured it out. But I noticed that some of the things they were looking to get were things that I would need to get for the block party I do every year. And so I called them and I said, hey, I'm like, tell me what it is you guys need. And so he's talking and he's rambling on about who was supposed to help and who didn't help, and who should have helped. And he's like, so we need X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I got it. And he paused for a second and then he kept talking, rambling on. It's like he heard me, but he wasn't sure he heard me. So he kept talking and he kept talking. And he's like, yeah, and we needed this and we wanted to have this. And I said, I got it. And he stopped. And the amount of emotion in that moment, just from me saying I got it. Now, mind you, I didn't go buy no Lamborghini. I literally paid for moon bounces and cotton candy machines and whatever else they were going to have that day. But the thing is recognizing that it doesn't take a lot to reach in and send the elevator back down. Mm-hmm. So what I did was take it a step further and surprise them and pay for them to become a nonprofit because somebody did that for me, right?
There you go.
And now they're able to do the work that they've been doing independently and have funding be able to come directly to them and me not be a buffer because there's no need for it. And I think it's recognizing that when you have an opportunity, regardless of how big or how small, that you pass that opportunity to someone who may not get that same opportunity. And that's what it is like. That's what equity looks like, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I get a chance to get in meetings with large funders like Paul Grogan, I bring those young men with me because they're never going to get a seat at the table to sit down and talk to somebody like that. But Paul Grogan needs to know that the very thing that they are looking to fund is on the backs of these young Black men. Mm-hmm. And so it's being able to recognize that, when you're from a community, you have stake in it. And so there's that. I'm done.
Well, I could go on forever with you talking. I just I want to thank the all of the sponsors of this thing. But I also want to recognize all the Black women who tuned into this. I'm honored that you showed up tonight and heard what we've been doing, and I hope and pray that you find your support system and to reach out to any of us if there's things you need for this work. I want to see a lot more Monica Cannon grants, even though she's number one in my heart. But I'm so honored to have you here, and I look forward to hearing from anyone who needs resources in doing this work, because Monica and I are just getting started. Did you want to do a question and answer? Is it time for that? Or
yeah, it's like 8:06.
Yes.
I think so.
Hi, so my name's Whitney. I am the Fund Development Manager at YWCA Cambridge, and I'm going to do some, just read off some questions for Monica and Xena. Okay, we have, where to go? I just lost it. Okay, Monica, should I be supporting the MA police reform bill that has gone to the House, or is it too watered down to support it all, or is it a baby step forward?
It's a baby step forward. I'm never going to tell someone not to support a piece of legislation that could potentially benefit the Black community, but it's extremely watered down. It's not what activists have been fighting for. I think one of the things that frustrates me is when we say something, there's a white person that tries to interpret it, or a non-Black person that tries to interpret it. And it's like, no, when I said defund the police, that's what I meant. I need you not to interpret that. I said what I said, right? And so it's watered down. Like, we asked to get rid of qualified immunity. If I'm not mistaken, Columbus just did it, or another state just recently did it, so it can be done. But I need legislators not to peddle to police unions and actually do what we asked them to do. And what they did was water down a whole bill. And yeah, so that's what we're left with. So yeah, that's my opinion. I'll leave it at that.
I have let me see if there's any.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any questions. I have a personal question that I'll ask while we wait for other people to throw any questions they have in the chat. I have a very conservative family, and my family is very anti-defund the police, and I don't know how to have that conversation. If you have any tips or like ways I can get through them to them, whatever your advice is.
Most conservative people love history, right? And I would encourage you to have them research the history of police departments. They were never to protect and serve Black folks. They were to catch and return slaves, right? And so in that aspect, there is no way you can expect me as a Black woman to believe that they are going to protect and serve me when I watch them on a daily basis, even with anti-chokeholding laws in place, choke out people, even with them not being allowed to use their knee, they're still kneeing people in the throat. Even in the midst of being told, hey, stop beating the hell out of Black people on video, they still do it. And even while peacefully protesting, I mean, Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job. So we can start there, right? Like, he literally took a knee, but he's not the only one, because Tebow did it. And it's like, it doesn't matter what we do at this point, you're going to be angry. But for those who are like, oh, well, you know, I'm conservative around the police department, it's like, so they were never created to protect and serve. That wasn't their model, and it still isn't, right? So when people say, what about the good police officers? My challenge is a couple of things. If the good ones are not telling on the bad ones, we still lose. The other piece is good police officers in a system that is entrenched in white supremacy does absolutely nothing, because that same system discriminates against Black officers. So clearly it is a systematic issue. It is not superficial. And until Black officers are treated equally or more equitably, until other officers are able to say, hey, you just killed somebody, or get your knee up off his neck, then I will never, ever in my lifetime have faith in the police department to protect me and my family. And I think that's how you start that conversation. How many videos do y'all need to see? One of the things that Will Smith said was, it's not that it just started happening, it's that there's video footage, right? But there's so much video footage that you can't ignore it. And COVID made it so that people were in the house who had time to actually watch the videos. And so now it's an injustice because the whole world can see, not just the Black community. And so that would be my pushback in having that conversation.
Thank you. The next question we have is, how can Cambridge best support your work?
Woo. So right now we're trying to raise funds to hire people. I've been doing this work by myself, which sounds crazy. And from organizing marches to like getting called out of my bed at 3 a.m. because somebody's house has been shot up, to staying nights in hospitals for young men who were getting discharged, to take them and drive them. I literally had the Nation of Islam escort us to a hotel outside the city to save a young Black kid's life, right? Now I've been given the opportunity to be able to possibly hire people who are just as passionate about this work as I am, but that takes money. Thoughts and prayers are great. It takes money because you want to make sure people have an equitable wage, benefits, and that they're properly taken care of, because you don't want them poor doing this work. And so that's what we're doing right now. So you can visit violenceinboston.org. You can see everything that we've been working on and doing. We just did food relief for 12 weeks, fed 80,000 people in the city of Boston off of grassroots fundraising, and then the grants kicked in maybe like the second or third week. And I don't know what it looks like to wait. So my perspective is that hurry up and wait thing, right? So when we found out that houses was exploding in Lawrence, my Black friends was like, girl, you don't know nobody in Lawrence. You don't even speak Spanish. I was like, I don't have to. There are brown people in a city whose houses are exploding, and the federal government has showed up, and immigration is not far behind. We have to go help them. So I told my husband, we're going to stay tonight in Franklin Park overnight. He's like, I'm sorry, what? Because I was 7 months pregnant, and we slept in Franklin Park and did a 24-hour drive. And then we drove 3 trucks down to Lawrence and took care of those people, because organizations like the Red Cross hand you one pad, one blanket, one sheet, and tell you good luck. And our people are not being properly serviced in a way that provides them with dignity. And so I just want people to understand that supporting me means that I get up and move. I'm not the typical organization. If somebody need help, I'm gonna feed them while you have a meeting about feeding them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There's a lot of love in the chat. Thank you for your energy, smarts, heart, and activism. Thank you, all in caps. Thank you, Monica. Thank you for all that you do. But what do you do? What do you, thank you for all that you do, but what do you do for yourself?
So I've been really horrible at self-care, I'm not gonna lie. I will literally be home and my husband tells me take a break, and I'll be laying in the bed like I'm not answering the phone for the rest of the day. And by the time he came home, I'd be done organized the whole march, a medics team, legal observers, and a bunch of other stuff. But I'm getting better at it. He between him and my best friend, they forced me into self-care. So I'll go stay at a hotel by myself just to sleep, because I can really sleep all day, or we'll go on a trip just for me to decompress. Pre-COVID, I would meet with Tina Sherry, who runs the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute, once a week, just to deal with all the emotions that come along with this work and all the mental health stuff that come along with this work. Because the other piece is if you don't take care of yourself, you will spill over onto other people unintentionally, right? And so just being mindful about what that looks like in the process of doing this work and being intentional about it. I've gotten better as I've grown and gotten older, but I was horrible at it. I would literally crash and burn and be laying on the floor somewhere, and somebody be like, can you go to bed now? Like, you don't have to protest until you can't breathe. And oftentimes you feel guilty about stepping away, but I'm no good to anybody else if I don't take care of myself. So
And Monica's the type of activist who not only is she meeting with the mayor and Ayanna Pressley and Elizabeth Warren and all of those, but then 2 a.m. I get message in Facebook that she's out at a crime scene and is dealing with that. And it's just, she is the kind of activist who does it all. And so the more resources we can give her, that means more people get hired to do parts of that. And that's the way Monica will be able to do self-care. We have to step up and get her to that level of funding so that she can, do even more work and pretend to self-care. She doesn't stop. She doesn't stop.
I'm gonna add the link to to donate on your organization in the chat if anybody wants to donate to Violence in Boston. There is another question coming in that says, where do we sign up to volunteer?
Oh, on the website.
Okay.
So you can go to the website, you can sign up to volunteer. All of that is data capture. It comes directly to the email that me, Xena, and Coco oversee. Because we're like a team of 3 right now. But yeah, you can sign up to volunteer. Right now, people have been helping with the cleanup process because we're trying to get the building ready for our September 7th open. We usually are in here on the weekends, just trying to clean up and get rid of stuff and prepare so that we can open and show everybody what we've been working on since December. Yeah.
The next, it says, thank you for caring for the young men you are saving. I always say I don't think people understand that Black men don't have the privilege to just walk down the street simply for the skin they are in.
Oh, that's our niece. I know our niece. Hi. Yeah, I mean, and this is the other piece. Black men are treated as problems before they're treated as people, right? And I guess for me, having Black sons, I got 4 Black sons. They start at age 22 and the youngest is 1. And recognizing how they've been treated and how they've been handled as young Black men by people that look like them, but also by people that don't look like them, right? And realizing the thing that they face where they're seen as criminal, even when they're doing normal things. I never forget, an officer stopped my boys because they had hoodies on and they were going to the store. And it's like, what teenager is not walking around in a hoodie? And like they had on, what is that, the Aeropostale hoodies, and they're going to the corner store. It was chilly outside. They didn't put on a jacket. They put on a hoodie. And he was like, I stopped you because you had a hoodie on. And it's like, huh? And I taught my kids that anytime they get stopped by a police officer, call me. Put your phone on video or call me. And so it just so happens there was one street over and I ran over there because they were 14 and 15 at the time. And I was like, so you're going to talk to me as the parent, they're minors, but also they weren't doing anything out of the norm. So what is your purpose? And eventually the cop walked away. He didn't want to give his badge number or any of that stuff. But their training, meaning police officers, are trained to treat our young people in our community as if they are at war that they left in Iraq or whatever country that they were in. And that's the problem, when you see our young people as problems before you see them as people. And so that's where my passion comes from, aside from the fact that they tried to take my child out. And so Something about being a mom, and I know a lot of moms that are on this call understand that. You be ready to fight. You go to war for your children. So you're like, okay, so which one of y'all I got to tackle to ensure that my son lives another day?
The next question that we have is, Monica, do you think that good jobs, good education, and housing will stop the violence in Boston?
Nope. So a job and a nice house is not going to stop violence anywhere, which is why you have white kids in the suburbs and two-parent households who are still murdering the next door neighbor or raping a girl down the street. It's support, right? It's mental. It's having those wraparound services. It's recognizing that our kids are not grown when they get to 10, 11, or 12, right? It's realizing that you have to raise your children all the way up until they're about 25, and it just looks different, right? So I didn't stop parenting my kids when they got to a certain age. It's just the way that I parent them looks different. I tell my kids on a regular basis, you're not grown until you have your own house, you're paying rent, light, cell phone bills, car insurances, and car notes, right? Why? Because even at 22, you're still trying to figure it out. That means you need guidance. And we have to get to the point where we understand that our kids need us well into their 20s. Other cultures do it. A lot of white families, the kid will be at home until they're 30. They have traveled to Europe, figured out their life, explored the country, came back, and then decided to be grown. Us in communities of color, a lot of us, and maybe not intentionally because we was never taught how to properly parent. There's no guidebook. I screwed it up a couple of times. At 12, 13, it's like, you're grown, I'm done. You can feed yourself, you can put on your clothes, and you can make a hot dog. I'm done. Good luck to you. The truth of the matter is our young people need us well into their 20s, entering into their 30s. They need the guidance, they need the support, and it doesn't matter what city you live in. Violence is a symptom of poverty, right? So when you look at communities that are 33% below poverty level, when you look at communities that have never been equitable, when you look at communities whose education is consistently being cut, housing is consistently being cut, food services are consistently being cut, these are the repercussions. You cannot consistently take away from something and expect it to thrive. And so what we're watching is, I'll tell anybody, COVID didn't create what we're going through. COVID exacerbated pre-existing problems in our community that we never addressed properly. Poverty is man-made. That means it can be fixed, but it's going to take people to actually be in the space to fix it. And so until we address it, you know, it's this quote that they used in the paper the other day that they asked me about the bill, and it's from Malcolm X, and it talks about the knife in your back. If you take it out 6 inches, that's not healing the wound. If you take it all the way out, that's not. America hasn't even been able to address that the knife is there. They don't even want to acknowledge that there's an actual wound. They just want us to overlook it and keep going. We have to address it. And the way you address it is through the policy decisions that you make around housing. Every time, your budget is a reflection of the things that you care about. So if you're not properly making sure that we have adequate housing, adequate food services, and adequate programming and things in place to ensure our success, then this is what you get. And it doesn't matter where you live. You're gonna, if I went into, I don't know, Dover, Mass, right? And I cut everything, what do you think is gonna happen? It's gonna be little white boys in the street trying to bust people in the face.
So we have two questions on youth, and so I'm going to combine them so we can get to all the questions. But how can white folks and people of color support Black youth? And then the second part of the question is, how can our Black girls in Roxbury being supported, and how can we continue to support them?
So I haven't yet seen a program that has encompassed wrapping around young Black girls. And at some point, I would love to navigate into that, but I have to be mindful of capacity because I'll overexert myself. But I have had conversations in the last few weeks about creating a program for young Black girls. With that comes a whole host of things, even more things than dealing with young Black men, just because as someone who was a young Black teenager, I know what I went through. It's that weird relationship with your parents and your mom. It's the abuse from the community. It's being targeted. It's being sexualized at an early age. It's a lot that encompasses that, but I'm hopeful that at some point we'll get there. And if anybody is working on a program with young Black girls, I would love to support them and be able to see how we could work together to get that done. How can white people support young people and young Black people in the community? Find the people who are on the ground and doing the work and support them. Don't try to jump in and be the white savior. It doesn't work. It's very disrespectful, by the way. But also, that's not the identity you want to hold. Find the people who are doing the work and say, listen, how can I show up for you as you do this work and be a resource, right? And if you are asked to come in and have a conversation with the young person, then do that. But just it's all about mindfulness. It's all about recognizing the privilege and being able to do that, right? Black women don't want you to come save us. That's not what we're asking for. We're saying we're very capable to lead and do the things that we need. We just need the resources. Like I'm glad Xena didn't come in with the whole, I'm about to save your whole world and you ain't got to do nothing, because that's ignorance. Because then you don't know what it is that I want.
Right.
Give me the space to do what needs to be done and support me in that. And that's what needs to happen across the board, Black people across the board.
You talked about the mayor, but what about Commissioner Gross and DA Rollins? How are you connected with them to enlarge your territory and continue this work? Is it superficial that folks think we have Black leadership, yet it seems things have gotten worse than better?
Ooh, loaded question. Ooh. I'm just gonna drink this water real quick before I answer this question, because oh Jesus. Okay, so I'm going to separate the problem from the person here. That's the best way I can describe this. Commissioner Gross as Willie Gross the person, we have an excellent relationship. Him as the top police officer in the city of Boston, there is no relationship, because there has to be an acknowledgement that his police department is drenched in white supremacy. And oftentimes he is in the space of defending officers as blue lives, while I feel like he brushes over the fact that he's a Black man first often. That's my personal opinion. And I'm not saying anything else. Please don't ask me. In regards to DA Rollins, we do have a relationship. We often have, so she has funded Violence in Boston last year. We actually received a grant from her to do some on the ground work with some young men in my community. We come together on a lot of different things. There are things that we disagree on, but we have the ability to still work together, have conversations together, and push back and forth on the things that we disagree on. I think for me, anybody working in law enforcement, we're going to have a relationship that's odd and weird, because I'm going to disagree on a bunch of stuff. But I do recognize that having a Black woman district attorney in a space and a mindset that is thinking about restorative justice, that is thinking about alternatives to incarceration, those things are wins for us. So her being there is a win for us, so to speak. And I also, in addition to that, have to recognize that she's going to make decisions that I'm not going to agree with, because she is still a district attorney. And I think both things can be true. But I recognize that as a Black woman, she is often disrespected, treated poorly, and have white men come for her life that should stay in their lane, four of them, so to speak, you know, and recognizing that at the end of the day, I'm going to fight for her as a Black woman the same way I would fight for any Black woman in my community, even in the midst of me maybe not agreeing with some of her policy decisions. So there is a relationship there. I'm honestly, and to be full transparent, I'm not looking to have a relationship with police department. That's not my lane, right? I actually recently went to Colombia, and I've actually been able to witness what it looks like to have a whole village. It's called Palenque, right? That don't have police. They have elders, where the elders lead the village. If you have an issue, you bring it before the elders. They make sure that the problem is solved before Sunday, going into the next week, and they function exceptionally well.
I'm muted. Whoops. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. One, let's see. There's so many. I apologize if we don't get to everybody's. Here's one. How do you have real conversations with people who don't want disruptions?
What is their definition of disruptions? So this is my thing. I don't know what they mean as disruption, because me protesting is a disruption to a lot of people, right? I think that people get comfortable with the comfortable protest, right? It's like, I went to the protest, I marched next to Black people, I checked the protest box, I go home, eat my cheese sandwich, and I do absolutely nothing. Black Lives Matter. That's not what it's about, right? So I'm not saying that everybody has to be on the front lines fighting. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is stop asking Black people not to fight back, right? Stop making it a requirement that we consistently show up while being beat, while being maimed, while being assaulted, while being disrespected, and say, hey, are you committed to peacefully protesting? No, I'm committed to hitting somebody back if they hit me, because that's what my mama taught me. If they hit you, you hit them back. And so when you talk about disruption, even me protesting peacefully is a disruption to some people who are uncomfortable with that. But it's in that discomfort that you learn. So if that is the case, then I want everybody to be uncomfortable, because that uncomfortableness that you feel is the same discomfort that I feel as a Black woman when I wake up in this country and in this city every day. It's the same discomfort that every time my son says he's going out the door to his friend's house, I'm like, oh Lord, I wish he would just stay in the house for the rest of his life and not go outside, because I ain't gonna get no sleep until he's back in the house, right? And so if disruption is the thing that you want to focus on, I challenge you to shift your focus into the fact that Black people are dying at the hands of police departments.
Thank you so much, Monica and Xena. You are both amazing. I'm so grateful to you both. I have a Jewish mixed-race family. I have been struggling with the anti-Semitism that is sometimes mingled with BLM, and is also prevalent with Black voices now in sports and media. I'd really want to help be a bridge here to help. I'd love to hear your thoughts or any advice. I live in Cambridge.
I am not the Black voice for all Black people, so I'm not going to be in a position to defend what other Black people may have said or done, because that is not my lane. I feel like the struggle that Jewish people went through and the struggle that Black people are still going through are similar. And so in that space, we need to recognize that both communities have experienced a large amount of pain. And for some of us on both sides, right, we spill on to other people in ways that are not helpful to the movement, and that's just the reality of it. But I will never be in a predicament to sit and justify what somebody else did, because they can speak for themselves. What I will say is that the same way that Jewish people are frustrated behind some of the things that Black people say in regards to their culture is the same thing that we experience from them, because when they wake up, they're still white. Even though they're Jewish, they're still white. Right? And it's recognizing that if we're going to be in community with each other and realize that our fights are aligned with each other, then that means that we're going to have to take the time to hear each other out and learn from each other, versus jumping to conclusions and feeling like you know what it is that we're fighting for and you know what it is to be us. The same way I will never know what it is to live through, experience, have ancestors that are part of the Holocaust. You don't know what it means that in 2020, we still have modern day slavery.
Well, thank you so much for answering all the questions. And sorry to anybody we didn't get to your questions, but there was a robust amount. Monica, thank you so much. I'm going to pass this over to Emily. Thank you for doing some Q&A with me.
Yeah, thanks. No problem.
Thank you, Whitney. I'm mindful of the time. Monica, Xena, thank you so much. The chat comments really reflect how we're all feeling. Your energy, your commitment, your wisdom that you shared tonight was really inspiring and energizing. I think everyone, not to speak for everyone, but I think we're all going to leave here feeling re-energized about the work, thinking about ways that we can commit to activism. As we said at the beginning, this was recorded. We were Facebook Living it, so I will send out links tomorrow to the recording if we have it tomorrow. But thank you, Monica and Xena. It was a truly wonderful evening, and thank you everyone on the Zoom meeting for your participation and your insightful questions.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.